Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in House Report number 110-416, offered by Mr. Cannon of Utah.
Pursuant to House Resolution 780, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Cannon, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself 3 minutes, and would like to begin by thanking the chairman of the full committee. We have worked on this bill, or ideas surrounding this bill, for I think over 10 years now, and it is now at the floor. It has been done with grace and with dignity, and I appreciate the gentleman's approach. We come from very, very different districts. I have over about 2/3 of my state is public lands. Very little of the gentleman's state is public lands, and so we differ. We have a different approach, and I think that's very appropriate, just as the gentleman pointed out in regard to Mr. Heller in his district. So we have differences. We come at these things differently, and in that context, I hope that the gentleman will consider accepting my amendment, and on the other hand, that our colleagues here today will recognize the importance of this amendment. My amendment would strike Section 517 of the bill before us. The amendment is necessary so common consumer products remain affordable. If Section 517 is not stricken, Americans will see an increase in the cost of everyday products such as glass, ceramics, paper, plastics, rubber, detergents, insulation, cosmetics, and pharmaceuticals, to name just a few. Section 517 deals with common varieties of industrial minerals. Unfortunately, this provision would put industrial minerals that are clearly identifiable as unique and thus locatable under the mining law into this category, despite existing law that has labeled them as locatable. Industrial minerals have been classified as locatable since 1872 under the general mining law. These minerals were never intended to be included in the Mineral Materials Act, and the Mineral Materials Act was designed to deal with bulk sales of common deposits of sand and gravel. Moving industrial minerals into the mineral these operations to continue to extract these unique can be loaded in the back of a truck and hauled away, yet Section 517 would do just that. Under the Mineral Materials Act, minerals are deposited or disposed of by non-competitive processes for small quantities and by competitive bidding contracts for terms of 10 years or less. However, it can take 50 years to extract industrial minerals, and the investment for doing that tends to be in the $50 to $100 million range. Competitive bidding contracts of a maximum of 10 years will remove any incentive by industrial mineral companies to research and explore for new reserves. After spending resources to discover reserves, and if also awarded the contract, the company will not be guaranteed the necessary time to actually extract the minerals and develop the resource. This will force our mining industry to move overseas and will result in the loss of thousands of high-paying jobs here in America. Not only will Section 517 create uncertainty for mine operators, but also impose a significant administrative burden on BLM. I urge my colleagues to support and reserve the balance of my time.
From West Virginia.
Rise in opposition to the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate very much the gentleman from Utah's concern and his deep involvement in this legislation. What worries me with his pending amendment is the myriad unintended consequences that may occur. In 1947 and again in 1955, the Congress took out from the operation of the mining law of 1872 mineral materials such as sand, stone, and gravel on federal lands, and provided that they could be sold under contracts. However, a loophole was inserted into the law. Under this loophole, if the sand, stone, or gravel was an uncommon variety, it would remain under the mining law of 1872. Now, determining just what an uncommon variety is has since cost the American taxpayers countless millions of dollars in litigation. The legislation before us today eliminates the distinction and confusion, and we would make all of these mineral materials available through sales contracts. The gentleman's amendment from Utah would strike that provision. In essence, the gentleman's amendment would continue to allow uncommon varieties of mineral materials to be claimed under the mining law as revised by this legislation. I'm not sure the sponsor of the amendment realizes that the result would be for these uncommon variety mining claims to be then subject to the bill's royalty regime and the bill's environmental standards. As such, if we adopted the gentleman's amendment, an 8% royalty would then be slapped on any future production from these uncommon variety claims. Be that as it may, I oppose this amendment. First, the American people receive a return from the disposition of mineral materials through the sales contract. Moreover, this distinction between uncommon and common varieties of sand, stone, and gravel is nothing but a scam. I well recall, as does the gentleman from Oregon, our colleague Peter DeFazio, the great sand scam at the Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area. I conducted a subcommittee hearing in Oregon on this issue. One person plastered mining claims over 780 acres of the recreation areas, 780 areas of the recreation area where the hearing was held, claiming the sand was uncommon. As I recall, his contention was that it had unique silica virtues for making glass. He then demanded $11 million from the federal government to buy him out. I well recall the stonewashed jeans scam, where this guy located mining claims for pumice in a wild and scenic river in New Mexico. He claimed that the pumice was an uncommon variety because you could produce stone-washed jeans with it. Give me a break. I think the gentleman gets the idea. And just because some special interest lobbyists got this loophole inserted into federal law in 1955 does not mean that it should be condoned today. I view it as a scam, a ripoff. I urge to defeat the amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Utah.
I believe I have the right to close. Does the gentleman have further speakers?
Gentleman from West Virginia has the right to close.
Oh, in that case, let me just take a couple of moments and make a couple of points. In the remainder of the time that I have, I yield that to myself. In the first place, I believe that what the gentleman was just talking about was metallurgical grade silica and different from the summary we've just had. I think, though, in response to his main argument, it is an amazing comment on the bulk of this bill that the producers of industrial metals prefer to be under the new regime than to be under the uncertainty that would be created and which is required, where they need certainty to develop minerals over 50 years instead of 10 years. And so while the gentleman's comment is well taken, I would suggest to him that the industry actually prefers my amendment, regardless of the fact that it incurs these other burdens. And I would take, and finally, exception to the reference to this as a scam. The fact that we don't have tax dollars coming to the Treasury based upon reserves that are being developed does not mean that Americans aren't better off because they have lower prices for paper, which requires kaolin, a common clay, not common, it's a locatable clay that makes paper cheaper. So this is a matter of policy. It is not a matter of scams, and I urge my colleagues to recognize that, to recognize the burdens that this would create on very common products that we are produced with these locatable minerals, and vote in support of my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself the balance of my time and merely would restate what I said earlier about the millions of dollars in litigation that the American people have shelled out to determine just what uncommon varieties are, and therefore the gentleman from Utah's amendment would merely continue allowing, without royalties being paid, and allow being mined for free these uncommon varieties of sand, stone, and gravel being mined from federal lands. So I would urge opposition to the amendment and yield back the balance of my time.